In the dusty streets of Ibadan, where hope was a currency scarcer than clean water, a boy named Adufe Lawal was born. He was not born into wealth. His home was a small rusted structure that groaned when the harmattan winds blew too fiercely. His parents were traders. They sold yams and peppers in the market, their hands rough from work and their faces etched with the worries of a life lived on the edge. Adufe learned early that survival was a daily struggle. He saw hunger in the eyes of his neighbors and felt the quiet desperation that hung in the air like the humid heat of the afternoon. Yet, even as a child, there was a fire in him, a light that refused to be dimmed by the poverty that surrounded him. Adufe was different. He knew it before anyone else did. Sometimes when he was alone in the fields, he would feel a strange pull, a connection to something ancient and powerful. He could hear whispers in the rustling of the leaves, secrets carried on the wind. The old gods, the Orisha, spoke to him. They were not loud voices demanding worship, but gentle nudges, feelings and visions that guided his young mind. He would see a storm coming long before the clouds gathered. He would know where to find the sweetest mangoes on the tallest trees. People in the village called him strange, a dreamer lost in his own world. But Adufe knew he was not lost. He was listening. One day, while chasing a stray goat near the Ogun River, he fell and cut his knee badly. The pain was sharp and fear gripped him. As he lay there weeping, he felt a warmth spread through him. It was a voice, deep and calm like the river itself, telling him to be strong. He looked at his reflection in the water, and for a moment he did not see a small crying boy. He saw the face of a hawk, its eyes sharp and clear. He blinked, and the vision was gone. But the pain in his knee had lessened. He stood up, no longer afraid. This was his secret, his gift. The spirits of the land were with him. He could borrow their forms, their strength, their sight. This power did not make his life easy. It made it more complicated. He had to learn to control it, to understand its purpose. The voices of the Orisha were not always clear. They were like riddles wrapped in proverbs, but they taught him to see patterns where others saw chaos. They taught him to be patient, to observe, and to act with courage. His childhood was not just a story of poverty, it was a story of quiet learning. He was being prepared for something greater. The boy who spoke to the wind was learning how to command the storm. He was learning how to build a future from the dust of his past, brick by silent brick. Adufe Lawal did not leave his past behind. He built upon it. His first venture was not grand or glamorous. It was humble, born from a simple need he saw everywhere around him. People needed stronger homes, buildings that would not crumble under the heavy rains. He started by making bricks. He did not have money for modern machines. He used the red earth of his homeland, mixing it with water and straw, just as his ancestors had done. But he added something new. He listened to the spirit of Ogun, the Orisha of iron and creation. The spirit showed him how to strengthen the clay, how to fire the bricks until they were as hard as stone. His bricks became known for their quality. They were stronger and cheaper than any others. Soon, small traders and then larger builders came to him. Adufe worked tirelessly, his hands covered in mud and his back aching from the sun. He hired young men from his village, giving them jobs and a sense of purpose. He did not just build a business, he built a community. He remembered the hunger of his childhood and made sure his workers were always paid fairly and fed well. The small brick-making operation grew into Lawal Industries, a name that would soon echo across the continent. It was the first step in his quiet revolution. From bricks, he moved to steel. Africa had rich deposits of iron ore, but for too long it had been shipped away, only to be sold back as expensive finished products. Adufe saw the foolishness in this. He believed Africa should forge its own destiny. With the guidance of Ogun whispering in his mind, he built his first steel mill. It was a massive undertaking, a gamble that many said would fail. He faced resistance from foreign companies that wanted to keep Africa dependent. But Adufe was stubborn. He saw the future in the fiery glow of the furnace. A future where Africa built its own cars, its own ships, its own dreams. The steel mill was a roaring success. It created thousands of jobs and sparked a wave of industrial growth. Lawal Industries became the backbone of a new Nigerian economy. Adufe was no longer just a businessman. He was a nation builder. He reinvested his profits back into his country, funding schools, hospitals, and infrastructure projects. He understood that wealth was not meant to be hoarded. It was a tool, a resource to be used for the good of all. The boy who once made bricks out of mud was now laying the foundation for a new Africa. An Africa that was strong, self-reliant, and proud. Adufe Lawal's vision extended beyond the ground. It reached for the heavens. He looked at the overcrowded cities, the sprawling slums, and dreamed of something better. He dreamed of cities that were clean, efficient, and beautiful. He dreamed of homes worthy of the people who lived in them. This was not just about building taller skyscrapers. It was about reimagining urban life itself. He envisioned cities that breathed, cities that were in harmony with nature, powered by the sun and the wind. He called this vision Asa City, the city of culture and innovation. It was a promise of a new way of living. To build these cities, Adufe turned to the most advanced technology, artificial intelligence. He gathered the brightest minds from across Africa and beyond. He gave them a simple yet profound challenge: create an AI that thinks with the wisdom of a village elder and the speed of a supercomputer. This AI, named Ori, which means consciousness or head in Yoruba, would manage everything. It would control the flow of traffic, optimize energy consumption, manage waste recycling, and ensure that public services ran smoothly. Ori was designed not to replace human connection, but to enhance it, freeing people from drudgery to focus on creativity, community, and culture. The first Asa city rose from the plains outside Lagos like a mirage. It was a marvel of architecture and engineering. Buildings were covered in vertical gardens, purifying the air and providing fresh produce. Self-driving electric pods glided silently along clean streets. Energy came from vast solar fields that shimmered in the sun like golden lakes. At the heart of the city stood the Grand Baobab, a massive biodome that housed a library of Africa's stories, art, and knowledge. It was a flying city, not because it floated in the air, but because it lifted the human spirit. It was a testament to what Africans could achieve when they dared to dream. The success of Asa City was immediate and transformative. It became a model for urban development worldwide. People from all over Africa flocked to live there, drawn by the promise of a better life. The city was a melting pot of cultures, a place where different languages, traditions, and ideas mixed to create something new and vibrant. Adufe would often walk the streets anonymously, sometimes taking the form of a simple market woman or a young student, just to listen to the people. He wanted to feel the heartbeat of his creation. He was not just building cities of steel and glass. He was building cities of hope. With industry thriving and cities rising, Adufe Lawal turned his attention to the most fundamental need of all: health. He remembered the sicknesses of his childhood, the preventable diseases that stole lives too soon. He saw the continent's reliance on expensive foreign medicines and knew this had to change. His vision was bold: to create a biotech industry that would not only cure diseases, but also enhance human potential, rooted in Africa's rich biodiversity. He founded Ile Iwosan, the House of Healing, a research institution dedicated to unlocking the secrets of life itself. The scientists at Ile Iwosan began by studying the continent's vast library of traditional medicine. For centuries, healers had used plants and herbs to treat ailments. Adufe's teams did not dismiss this knowledge. They respected it. They used modern science to identify the active compounds in these ancient remedies. They discovered powerful new drugs for malaria from the bitter leaf plant and developed treatments for cancer from the bark of a rare savanna tree. It was a perfect fusion of old wisdom and new technology. Africa was no longer just a consumer of medicine, it was a source of miracles. The greatest breakthrough came in the field of genetics. Ile Iwosan developed a revolutionary biotechnology that could repair damaged DNA and eliminate hereditary diseases. They created tailored therapies that could regenerate organs and reverse the effects of aging. Life expectancy across the continent began to soar, but Adufe insisted that this technology be accessible to all, not just the wealthy. He created a system of community health centers where these advanced treatments were available for free. He believed that a healthy life was a human right, not a luxury. His work was guided by the spirit of Osanyi, the Orisha of herbal medicine. These biotech miracles transformed society. Farmers used genetically modified crops that were resistant to drought and pests, ending the cycle of famine forever. Clean water was generated through bioengineered agriculture. The land began to heal from decades of environmental damage. Adufe's work was not just about healing individuals, it was about healing the entire continent. He saw life as a sacred gift. His mission was to protect and enrich. Through he planted the seeds of a stronger and more vibrant Africa, ensuring a bountiful harvest for generations to come. Adufe Lawal knew that no single person, no matter how powerful, could build a new Africa alone. His greatest strength was not his wealth or his shape-shifting abilities. It was his family. He was married to 3 remarkable women, each a pillar of strength and wisdom in her own right. Funke, his first wife, was the heart of the family. She was a woman of deep empathy and quiet strength who managed their household and their philanthropic foundation with grace. She reminded Adufe of the importance of compassion and community, ensuring that his ambition was always tempered with humanity. His second wife, Zainab, was a brilliant strategist and diplomat. She came from a noble family in the north and possessed a keen political mind. While Adufe built industries, Zainab built alliances. She navigated the complex world of politics, forging partnerships with leaders across the continent and beyond. She was his most trusted advisor, the one who could see the hidden traps and the unseen opportunities. She was the queen who secured the kingdom, her counsel as valuable as any army. Zainab ensured that the Lawal Empire was not just powerful but also respected. Esi, his third wife, was an artist and a cultural historian from Ghana. She was the keeper of Africa's soul. Esi believed that progress without culture was meaningless. She curated the museums, championed the artists, and established the academies that preserved and celebrated the continent's rich heritage. She made sure that the new cities and technologies were infused with African aesthetics, music, and stories. She was the one who reminded Adufe that a nation is not built on steel and concrete alone, but on the songs of its people and the stories they tell their children. Together with their children, they formed a powerful and united force. His eldest daughter, Amara, was a genius in biotech, destined to lead Ile Iwosan. His son Bayo was a charismatic leader, being groomed to take over the industrial arm of the empire. The younger children, twins named Kehinde and Taiwo, showed early signs of their father's spiritual gifts. The Lawal family was a microcosm of the new Africa Adufe was building. Diverse, talented, and bound together by a common purpose. They were not just a family, they were a dynasty of dreamers and builders. Adufe's connection to the Orisha was both a blessing and a burden. The voices that had guided him since childhood grew more insistent as his power increased. They were not a single unified chorus. They were a pantheon of powerful, often conflicting personalities living inside his mind. Ogun, the god of iron and war, urged him to be ruthless, to crush his enemies without mercy. Ocean, the goddess of love and beauty, pleaded for diplomacy and grace. Shango, the god of thunder and justice, demanded bold, decisive action, while Obatala, the father of humanity, counseled patience and moral purity. This internal conflict was a constant struggle. There were days when Adufe felt as if he would be torn apart by the warring deities within him. When a political rival threatened his work, Ogun's voice would roar in his head, demanding that Adufe transform into a lion and tear the man to pieces. He would have to physically restrain himself, breathing deeply and calling on the calming influence of Obatala to quiet the rage. He learned to mediate between the gods, to listen to all of them, but to make his own choices. His soul was the council chamber where the fate of his actions was decided. The spirits did not just offer advice, they demanded respect and tribute. Adufe built beautiful shrines to them in every city, not as places of fearful worship, but as centers of cultural celebration and reflection. He sponsored festivals that honored their stories and principles. He knew that these were not just ancient myths, they were archetypes, powerful psychological forces that represented the fundamental aspects of nature and the human spirit. To ignore them was to ignore a part of himself, a part of his heritage. He taught his children to listen to the whispers as he did, to understand them as guides, not masters. Over time, Adufe learned to harmonize the voices. He realized that each Orisha offered a piece of the whole truth. Ogun's fire was needed to forge progress. Ocean's waters were needed to heal and unite. Shango's lightning was needed to clear a path for justice. And Obatala's wisdom was needed to ensure that all was done with balance and for the good of humanity. His spiritual journey was about integrating these divine energies, becoming a vessel through which their collective power could flow constructively. He was not a man possessed by gods. He was a man who had learned to dance with them. Of all the challenges Adufe faced, none was more painful than the betrayal from within his own family. His son, Bayo, was his chosen heir. He was handsome, intelligent, and charismatic, everything a future leader should be. Adufe had poured all his hopes and dreams into the young man. He trained him in business, in politics, and in the ways of the spirits. He saw in Bayo the future of his legacy, the continuation of the dream. But a shadow of resentment grew in Bayo's heart, a darkness that Adufe, in his focus on building a continent, had failed to see. Bayo grew tired of living in his father's immense shadow. He saw his father's mercy as weakness. He listened to the whispers of corrupt politicians and greedy foreign investors who promised him power, true power, without the burden of his father's moral codes. They told him that Adufe was an old man, a relic whose time was passing. They offered him a shortcut to the throne, a chance to seize the empire for himself and run it as he saw fit. Bayo, blinded by ambition and a deep-seated desire to prove himself, began to conspire against the man who had given him everything. The betrayal was subtle at first, a business deal that mysteriously failed, a political alliance that suddenly fractured, sensitive information leaked to rivals. Adufe, guided by the watchful spirit of Eshu, the trickster Orisha who sees all crossroads, began to notice the small inconsistencies. He did not want to believe it. How could his own son, his beloved Bayo, work against him? The thought was a spear in his heart. He decided to investigate, transforming himself into an insignificant fly on the wall in rooms where his son held secret meetings. What he heard shattered his world. Bayo was planning a coup. He had allied himself with the very cabals Adufe had fought his entire life. They planned to discredit Adufe, to portray him as a tyrant and a madman who talked to spirits. They would seize control of Lawal Industries, dismantle his philanthropic projects, and sell off pieces of the empire to the highest bidders. Bayo spoke of a new era, an era of pure profit, free from his father's sentimental dreams of a united Africa. For Adufe, this was a betrayal not just of a father by a son, but of the entire African dream. The pain was deeper than any physical wound. The confrontation was inevitable. Adufe summoned Bayo to his private study, a room lined with ancient artifacts and books of wisdom. The air was thick with unspoken grief. Adufe did not rage. His voice was low, filled with a sorrow that was heavier than any anger. He laid out the evidence of Bayo's betrayal, the recorded conversations, the secret bank accounts, the pacts made with enemies. Bayo did not deny it. His face was a mask of defiance. He stood before his father, not as a penitent son, but as a rival claimant to the throne. "Why?" Adufe asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why would you destroy everything we have built?" Bayo's answer was cold and sharp. "You built it," he spat. "Not we. I am tired of being your shadow. I will build my own legacy, on my own terms." In that moment, the rage of Ogun, the warrior god, surged within Adufe. His eyes glowed with an inner fire. The room seemed to tremble. He felt the transformation begin, the urge to become a great lion and end this treachery with a single brutal strike. His bones began to shift, his muscles to bunch, but then another voice, soft and cool as the river, whispered in his mind. It was Oshun. She reminded him of the love he bore for his son, the baby he had held in his arms. She pleaded for mercy, for a path other than violence. Adufe fought against the primal rage. He closed his eyes, his body shaking with the effort of holding back the lion. He remembered his own father, a man of peace. He remembered that his dream for Africa was one of unity, not destruction. To kill his own son would be to become the very tyrant his enemies accused him of being. Slowly, the fire in his eyes subsided. He did not kill Bayo. Instead, he made a decision that was far more painful and far more just. He stripped Bayo of all his titles and responsibilities. He exiled him from the family and from the empire he had sought to steal. "You want to build your own legacy," Adufe said, his voice now firm and clear. "Then go and do it, with nothing. Start as I did, with only your own 2 hands. Find out what you are truly made of." He turned away, the image of a grieving father, not a vengeful god. The lion had been tamed by love, and in its place stood a man of profound sorrow and strength. Years passed. The Lawal Empire continued to flourish under Adufe's steady hand, guided by his loyal family. His daughter, Amara, took over the leadership roles that Bayo had abandoned, proving to be a brilliant and compassionate leader. The pain of his son's betrayal never fully left Adufe, but it softened. Like a sharp stone worn smooth by the current of a river, he focused on his work, on the future, on the millions of lives he was improving. He rarely spoke of Bayo, but he never stopped listening for news of him, a father's hope, a stubborn, flickering candle in the wind. Bayo, cast out and alone, experienced the harsh realities of the world he had once looked down upon. He had no name, no money, no allies. He worked menial jobs, slept in cheap hostels, and felt the sting of hunger and irrelevance. For the first time in his life, he was invisible. He saw the world not from a skyscraper, but from the street. He saw the hope in the eyes of the people his father's work had helped. He saw the clean water, the community clinics, the schools filled with laughing children. He saw the Africa his father was building, and for the first time he truly understood it. Humility came to him slowly, painfully. His arrogance was stripped away, layer by layer, until only the raw, regretful core of him remained. He began to work not for power, but for purpose. He started a small cooperative, helping local farmers get fair prices for their produce. He used the business skills his father had taught him, not to enrich himself, but to uplift a community. He was building something small, but it was his, and it was good. One day, a traveling elder, who had the kind, familiar eyes of his mother Funke, visited his village. Bayo, humbled and changed, asked the elder to carry a message to his father. The message was simple: "I am sorry." When Adufe received the news, he felt a stirring in his soul. It was the spirit of Obatala, the creator, who preaches forgiveness and reconciliation. Adufe knew his son had completed his journey. He traveled to the small, remote village. He did not arrive in a flying car or with a grand entourage. He came as he had started, a simple man walking a dusty road. He found his son not a prince but a man, his hands calloused from work, his face weathered but at peace. There were no grand speeches. They simply embraced, a father and son, the river of time and forgiveness finally washing away the stone of betrayal. In his later years, Adufe Lawal felt a deep sense of peace. The voices of the Orisha within him no longer fought for control. They spoke in harmony, a council of wise elders guiding his final act. His work was done. The continent was transformed. Africa was no longer a place of pity, but a beacon of innovation, culture, and hope. Asa cities dotted the landscape, connected by silent high-speed trains. The deserts bloomed, hunger was a distant memory, and the spirit of the people was strong and proud. He had not just built an empire, he had nurtured a renaissance. He gathered his family, his 3 wives and his children, now grown and wise in their own right. Bayo stood beside his sister Amara, their past conflict resolved, their bond stronger than ever. Adufe looked at them, his heart swelling with pride. They were the future. He announced his decision to step back, to pass the torch to the next generation. He was not abdicating a throne. He was entrusting a legacy. He divided the leadership of his vast enterprise among them, not by wealth but by talent and passion. Amara would lead the biotech vision. Bayo, humbled and wise, would manage industry and infrastructure with a new sense of service. The others would guide culture, education, and diplomacy. His final public address was not from a podium, but from the heart of the Grand Baobab in Asa City. His image was broadcast across the continent, seen by billions. He did not speak of profits or power. He spoke of unity, of purpose, and of the sacred duty to build a better world. I started with nothing but the dust of this land and the whispers of our ancestors, he said, his voice gentle but strong. Everything you see around you we built together. This is your Africa. Protect it, nurture it, love it, and never forget who you are. Adufe Lawal retired from the world of business and politics. He spent his final days in his childhood village of Ibadan, not in a palace but in a simple, beautiful home surrounded by a garden. He became a storyteller, a village elder, sharing his wisdom with the children who sat at his feet. They saw him not as a titan of industry, but as a grandfather with kind eyes and magical stories. He had come full circle. The boy who spoke to the wind had become the gentle breeze itself, his spirit forever woven into the fabric of the new Africa, a continent shining brightly, like the dawn of 1,000 suns.